listen to fall to the floor.
Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Today we're going to revisit a theme that I've done a few times in my videos, and that's restoring a vintage pen. So there's two in this series. This is the first one. I did a previous restoration where I did two pens at the same time. I decided to limit the size of the video to just do one pen at a time, and the two pens have some slightly different perspectives to them, so I wanted to keep them separated. I bought this on eBay last year, so that's a while ago. It took me a while to get motivated to do a video, and that's, I really appreciate my viewers and the comments and the interactions, and I've made some friends that I just find very valuable, and it certainly has increased my enjoyment of this hobby. In the background is Larry McMurtry, who's a great singer-songwriter. I love that art form. So, and it's also nice to have some music when you're doing restoration. So what attracted me what attracted me to this pen? Well, I'd have to be very honest, it was the look.
What will I do when it
Again, I would like to say it's celluloid. I don't really know to confirm that. It's certainly a look that is nice, very attractive, and that's, I hate to admit it, even though I talk about loving the way pens write, and that's really why I got into pens, but I have to admit I also love the way that they look, and I love the engineering. That's my profession. So this is the pen. This is as received. So I want to be very clear. I don't have all the details on the eBay auction. Much to my chagrin, I didn't record them when I bought the pen. But hopefully this little drive-by is giving you an idea of why I may have been interested in it. It's a medium-sized pen, which a lot of vintage pens are. The large vintage pens are long gone. I think they've been scooped up, and you're not going to find one for a few dollars on eBay. It's an unscrew cap. So one of the key things when you get vintage on eBay is that the threads work well. So it's a little bit less than one turn to take the cap off. Now we'll take a look at the nib. And this is a classic, as found vintage pen. You got a nib there with probably a lot of dried ink on it, but at the end of the day, that's fine. This is a gold nib that's going to clean up extremely well. The section looks good. It's a classic black section. I mean, this is what Sheaffer has done. This is a balanced pen, so it has that classic bullet shape on both ends of the barrel and the cap, and a classic lever fill. You might try to play with it, and as you notice, it's not going to work because the bladder inside is probably quite stiff over years of being exposed to ink, and years since this pen was made, probably in the 30s. So what do you find that's probably not the best? There are marks on the cap. You might call them teeth marks, whatever. The clip is not in contact with the cap, so obviously that's something I think from my viewpoint is easy to fix. You kind of rebend this a little bit. It's very sturdy as far as being into the cap, so I'd rather prefer that than the fact that the clip is in contact with the cap. So if you've watched some of my other videos, the first thing we try to do is remove the section. So I use this wide rubber band, which I collect them from the lobsters, being on the northeast of the United States. Lobsters from Maine are very common, and they use these rubber bands to keep the claws closed because the lobsters, when you buy them, are live. So that's a perfect little gripper, and the first thing you do is you just try to turn it, And if it turns, which this is doing, then you know that that's probably going to come out, and it does. So that's the first sign of a pen that's going to be less of a challenge to restore. As you can see, there's still a sack that was attached to the end of this, and the rest of the sack is probably inside of the barrel. And we'll do a little, and it starts coming out. So again, that is what I love to see in a pen like this, because I know it's not been touched or restored by anybody else. A lot of people might ask what tools you use. So this is a tool that I bought. It's specifically designed for working with pens with sacks in them. And it has two ends. One's a rounded end, so that could be used to scrape the inside of the cap. And this is a pointed end because sometimes the sack adheres itself to the inside of the barrel. To take a look inside, you always got to look at stuff before you start working on it. So I use my trusty little LED light. And obviously you can see the sack in there, you can see the lever bar. So I'm not something I'm going to work on with the camera, but you get the idea of what we're going to do to get that old sack out of there. The sack came out pretty easily. It was just kind of distorted in there. You know, this is definitely a sack that has seen better days as it crumbles in hand. So I'm going to do my polishing with my pads. I'm going to clean off the sack at the end of the section. I'm going to clean up the nib, you know, soak it for a little bit and to see how the flow is and see if I need to take it apart, which is what I don't do that unless I have an issue. I think this pen's going to restore very easily and be a very nice addition to my collection or anyone's collection. So one of the most critical parts of a pen restoration is the nib and feed. So I use this little bulb, I attach it to this section, and I force water through it. This was clear. It's a little bit of ammonia, a little bit of soap, and I'll leave it soak as long as necessary. As you can see, there's a fairly decent flow. The bulb fills out pretty quickly. So I'm happy with the flow. This is a Sheaffer. You're not going to get a gusher. It's not a Waterman. So I'm good. So just to make a correction, I mentioned Larry McMurtry. These songs are by James McMurtry, which is Larry McMurtry, the author's son. As I said, he's an excellent singer-songwriter, and I enjoy basically every song he's ever done. So very apropos, you know, both personal, political, socially. So if you are into that type of music, I recommend you give him a listen. If you got Amazon Prime, you can get most of his music for free. So take advantage of it. And as you can see, that nib, I haven't done anything to it, and most of the ink is gone. So I'm going to finish this up with a little bit of a water flush, a little polish, and I think we're ready for a bladder. So now we're going to look at the body of the pen, polished and waxed. I'm very happy with how it came out. The tarnish has been removed. So part of the restoration process is, this is a Sheaffer Balance, which was one of their higher end pens. So the materials that it was made of are of good quality. If they're gold plated, they're heavily gold plated, and if they're gold filled, then you can do a lot of polishing on them to get any corrosion or dirt off of it. This is not my normal lighting. I have no sunlight, so hopefully this color is coming across. As you can see, I have to clean out the breather hole. I use that a toothpick for that. The top of the pen, that piece at the top looks like it might be fracturing and eventually coming off, but I'm not worried about that now. I really like the way that there's a little bit of clarity there at the top of the cap. Again, I really just enjoy the materials. Nice clear imprint on the pen. I have the nib section being worked on, and what I'll do is I'll clean out the inside of the cap in case there's any old ink left in there, and I do that after the waxing. And you may have remembered that the clip was not in contact with the cap, and now it's pretty good and tight, so it's going to work well. It just took a little bit of bending. I have a wooden rod that I put in here and rebend it. Part of every good restorer is their toolkit, and most of us improvise. There's no really a place you can go for a set of tools for pen restorations. You can get specific tools for certain things like sack removal or a sack spreader, but you basically figure out what you need to do. So this is a test tube brush. Some of us who did a lot of chemistry may recognize it, and it fits almost all the caps that I work on. So it's very good for inserting in the cap and removing and loosening up any ink that was in there. So it took about a couple minutes with this cap to get it clean, so the inside of it now is nice and clean, and I'm ready to go. And I waxed it before because you never know what water does to certain materials, and you don't want any more corrosion, so I clean everything and wax it, and then I clean the outside first, and then I do the inside. I lucked out on this pen because the nib was, the nib was easy to remove from the feed and section. So this is thoroughly clean. I'm very happy with it. The ammonia flush comes out clean. And the nib, like I said, was easy to remove, and it polished up really nice. I mean, this is a classic Sheaffer 530 nib. I think it has to do with a 30-year warranty. I'll look it up and give you those details, but you know, people talk about the difference between gold and steel nibs, and I'll have to tell you from a vintage perspective, nothing cleans up like a gold nib in a vintage pen. I mean, that's basically back to being brand new. In polishing the nib and the section and the barrel and the cap, I start out with a clean polishing pad, and this is how it ends up. So I'll generally go through one pad per pen, which I think is a minor investment to get it finished to the level that I like it to be. So the thing that every good pen restorer needs is sacks. So I keep a selection of sacks. They range from 15s through to 22s. So I'll find one that I think will fit in this barrel, and then we'll have a pen that's ready to go. I'm going to go for a 16. And as you can see, I have a few 16s. 16s and 17s seem to fit 90% of the pens that I work on, so those I try to keep in pretty good supply. So what we do is we see how the sack fits into the barrel. And right away I have a concern because the sack doesn't go in all the way. It stops. I guess that's not bad because of the way that the barrel narrows down there at the end. The 16 feels a little bit loose, so I'm going to see what a 17 feels like. You want it to fit easily. You don't want to have the sack in constant contact with the lever and the pressure bar. So I'm thinking I'm going to try an 18. Of course, finding an 18 in my group of may not be the easiest thing to do. No, I actually got 14s here too. Oh, there's my 18s. As you can see, I have less of these than I have of 16s and 17s. One of my favorite James McMurtry songs on the. So that has a little bit of resistance going in and out of the barrel. So I think I'm going to stick with a 17. So some people get sacks with reduced sections at the end to fit at the end of the section, but I like the straight sacks. So like I said, the 17 really fits the best. Like I said, you want it loose in there. So this is all the way in, and then what I'll do is I'll take this part and present it there, and then bring it out. And I'm going to cut the sack about 1/8 of an inch above that end, so nothing is really forcing it, so the sack can easily expand when we fill it with ink. I tell you, batteries and video cameras are a strange bunch. So I have a battery that I charged for a day, and I put it on, it lasted for 10 minutes. So a lot of you have seen these sack spreaders that I have. These are really vintage ones from I happened to inherit a Parker pen repair kit. So I put a little bit of glue on the end of the nib, and now over the camera I'm going to try to put this together. You know, once I get it in place, I get rid of the spreader, which is easier said than done. Okay, so now the nib is in place, so I move it around a little bit to make certain that the glue is equally distributed. And I also look to see that the sack is on fairly straight. Needs a little adjustment. And I think that's in good shape. So I'm going to let that set for a day before I ink it, and then we'll see how this writes for the first time live on video. How big is the Sheaffer pen? Here it is lying on a ruler, and it's about 5 1/4 inches long from end to end. You know, a lot of that length is in the pointy barrel, the balance. Here's another balance from the same type of time period. As you can see, it's slightly less than 5 inches. Here's a Sheaffer remake of the balance, and it's about the same length, a little bit longer, but it's certainly girthier. Here's a Parker 45 of the similar era, your Lamy Safari, and your Pilot 78G. So, I mean, it's a decent sized pen. Actually, in this group, seems bigger than it did when I was working on it. We're pretty much ready for the final assembly. One of the things we want to check is the action of the lever, the fill lever, and the pressure bar. So they look to be pretty good, so let's see what it's like. Oh. And as you can see, it works very well, snaps back well, so that's good. We can do the little light thing and take a look at how that celluloid is done in here. There's a little inner cap that blocks the light as you go up into the cap, but you know, down here you get a nice amount of transparency, and if you look at the barrel you can also see a little bit more of that interesting material. The other thing to do is check out the nib alignment, and I looked at this under a loop, and is like most Sheaffer nibs, this thing is pretty much perfect. Fits the feed very well, so we're going to put this puppy together and put it to paper. Here's an ad from the late 30s, which is the period in which the pen was made. As you can see, they made these in a variety of colors and styles, desk pens, you know, pen and pencil sets, gold and nickel trim, and also the lifetime warranty with the dot, as well as not the lifetime warranty. So these were made out of a material called Pyralin, which was a nitrocellulose that DuPont made for Sheaffer. And the 530 on the nib is a $5 pen with a 30-year warranty, so that's pretty interesting. And as you can see, they're trying to position this as both a writing instrument of value and also one of looks good. Now comes the real test. We're going to assemble the parts and ink it up and put nib to paper, and hopefully get some good experience out of it. You know, we put our talc on the sack, just a little bit of talc, and as I discussed before, I line up the nib with the pressure bar and the the lever, and it slides in pretty tight, so that's good. We don't have to worry about it coming loose. So that's the way I like it. We're going to use this Sailor ink, which is Miari. I always put in the translation seaweed, green, blue, black, so it would be an interesting combination with this pen. You know, the nib fits pretty well into the little receptacle. nice bubbling. So I do 1, 2, and 3. Bring it up and we'll leave it set for, you know, about 10 seconds. Get off as much excess as we can back into the bottle. Cap the ink. Before we do the writing sample, I thought I'd do a little editorial comment. So this pen cost me a little over $30 on eBay, and you know, a couple bucks in actual materials to restore it, and I think it cleaned up very well. Would I buy this pen again? No, because I already have one. Is it add anything interesting to my collection? Well, this is the only Sheaffer balance I have in this color and material, but I think if I tried to collect all the colors of the Sheaffer balance series, I don't think I'm going to be able to live long enough. So I enjoy the pen. I like the pen. I really enjoy restoring them. I enjoy working on them. I enjoy bringing some history back to life. You know, I like the fact that this pen came to me pretty much in as-found condition. So when I look on eBay, I look for estate sales. I look for people that buy garage sales. I tend to not buy from collectors or restorers. You know, they're going to charge for what I normally like to do, so therefore, you know, why would I pay them? I mean, I'm not saying I'm never going to do that, but that's something I would do at a show where you really have a lot of interaction and you can actually see the pens and talk to the person who did the work. So this is, again, it's just a very nice pen. It's not anything anybody's going to find. It's unique, which makes it different from any of the pens that you're going to buy from a retailer. You know, they're going to give you what someone has mass produced of some nature. I mean, obviously the Edisons and the Franklin Christophs have a lot of handwork done to them, but they are still one of many when you buy them. This nib is just comparable to any type of stiff nib, so that's you know, not the deciding factor in this pen. And as I mentioned, as I will mention, sorry, it's a future thing, but this is being recorded in the past or in the future after I did the writing sample. But these nibs in these pens, and Sheaffer did this probably from the early 30s through forever. They really made a stiff nib. I mean, Waterman made flexi nibs until the late 40s, at least from the ones that I have in my collection. Parker started out with flexi nibs, and I do have a few of those really early Parkers, and they're beautiful writers. But as time went on and the dual folds came out, the nibs got stiffer. Again, is that because it was a trend or popular or competing with Sheaffer? You know, while Eversharp, which I also love, their early pens are similar to the Parkers, very flexible. As time went on, they still made some flexi nibs, but those nibs became much fewer, and they made more stiffer nibs similar to the Sheaffers and the Parkers. So it's hard to put things in perspective, but you know, I have my view from my collection, which is not small. And I love reading the books that I read, and you know, I still continue to read and talk to people at shows and learn more about pens because they're just a lot of fun. So hopefully that was useful. Sorry, I may have rambled on a little bit, but you know, this is what I love doing. And I have another pen I'm going to restore. It's a Parker Challenger, so that's going to be next up on the list. So look forward to that video. So we cleaned off the nib. As you can see, it fits nice in the hand without posting. But if you'd like to post, it posts nice and secure. And it makes for a good sized pen. This is on the light side. I'll post the weight. So let's see how this thing writes. I mean, Sailor is a nice wet saturated ink, and it certainly looks nice in this nib. It's, say, the nib's on the fine side. It's also pretty stiff, which is common of these nibs from Sheaffer. You're not going to find a Waterman Flexi in this time frame. It's also not quite as smooth as I would like. So we're going to take our little board here, even though when I looked at it under the loupe it looked fine. So The pink is rougher, the whitish is a little less rougher, and the black is kind of like the fine stuff. So I just do a couple little things on the rough side, not a lot, and then I go to the little bit of the other side, flip it over, and then this is the smoothing. Everybody has their own techniques. And I noticed a difference. The toothiness is gone, and it really glides across the paper very nicely. I think you can hear that. So all in all, I'm happy with this pen. I'm not a fan of this Sheaffer nib, but I think I will learn to like it, because if you're taking a lot of notes and writing a lot day to day, this nib is just a pleasure to use, because it's not demanding. And it writes the same time all the time. It doesn't matter how much pressure you put on it, which is, I think, a design of Sheaffer's, even though some of their competition was giving you some flex and some ways of doing maybe like a copper plate or whatever, but this certainly was one that you could use on carbon paper, which was becoming popular at this time. So hopefully you enjoyed this view and this restoration. I know I certainly enjoyed doing it. And you know, you can take some of these vintage pens and turn them into great writing instruments, both in beauty and in function. So may you have many writing experiences. May they all be pleasurable. May you have a lot of variation. Have a good day.